Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by FlexiCharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to this new episode of the ChargePoint podcast, where we explore how electrification is reshaping logistics, transport, and energy. I'm your host, Christophe, and I'm from FlexiCharge. Today's episode takes us right into the heart of the e-truck revolution, one that's moving from pilot projects to full-scale operations across Europe as we speak. Because what's happening right now is more than just switching from diesel to electric. It's actually a total rethink of how logistics networks are built, powered, and optimized. And that's where Fryte comes in. They are a young and ambitious company building the operating system for electric freight, enabling fleets and logistic operators to plan, charge, and run electric trucks efficiently from depot to delivery. Joining me today is Sebastian Wolff, Fryte's co-founder and CTO. We will talk about how Fryte started, why now is a tipping point for zero-emission trucking, and how digitalization and energy management are becoming just as important as batteries and chargers. We'll also discuss what it takes to make depot charging truly work, how fleets can move from early pilots to scalable operations, and why partnerships between innovators like Fryte, platforms like FlexiCharge, and other third-party services are essential to accelerate this transition. Because ultimately, the e-truck revolution isn't just about vehicles, it's about making logistics smarter, cleaner, and more resilient. So stay tuned. This is a conversation about how data, software, and energy intelligence will define the future of freight in Europe, and how companies like Fryte are already building that future today. All right, let's get started with today's guest, Sebastian from Fryte. Welcome, Sebastian, to the ChargePoint podcast.
Hi, Christophe. Happy to be your guest.
Thank you for taking the time. So you are the CTO of Fryte, but let's get started with a bit of a background. What's your origin story that led you to the position you are today? Before talking about Fryte, let's hear what you did before.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. So my name is Sebastian. I am a mechanical engineer from Munich. So I studied mechanical engineering at the Technical University there. And if you study engineering, and for me, especially car engineering, you usually want to go for faster cars and not trucks. But I ended up doing some student projects in the area of algorithms and optimization algorithms. And this is where my truck journey began. I just liked how these things work. I was very fascinated by it, and I wanted to do more and more. So I looked for more student projects, wrote my student thesis, my master thesis on it, and eventually became a PhD in this area. And from there on, it was only just a couple of steps to become sort of an expert on trucks, on TCO, total cost of ownership, but also sustainability, vehicle technology. So everything that's related to how trucks could work, look, and run like in the future was my research topic. And this is obviously where we came across electric trucks. And this is where Max, my co-founder, enters the stage. During my time as a PhD, I initiated one of the bigger research projects in the area of electric trucks. And I was lucky enough to hire Max as the project lead for this one. And from there on, he was focusing on e-trucks. I was focusing on sustainability of trucks. And this is how ideation of Fryte began. And now we are a team of 10.
No, fantastic. Yeah. So, and what's Max's background, just to get a picture for the audience?
Yeah, we share a very similar background. We are both not originally from Munich, so both went here for studies for mechanical engineering. So we share this. We also share some history in mountain biking and outdoor sports. But that has nothing to do with e-trucks. That's just a coincidence. As part of this bespoke research project, they were building together with a very big team with different industry partners, OEMs, but also suppliers. They were building the technology to charge a truck with more than 1 megawatt. So this is called MCS charging, or megawatt charging system is the standard. I think we will talk about this later on.
Come back, yes.
And yeah, they enabled a truck from MAN to accept this kind of power, to accept the amperage, etc. But they also built a charging station from scratch. So really from a blank white sheet of paper, assembled everything. So there are a lot of pictures where Max is inside a mountain of cables and putting together stuff. So he's really one of the charging experts in our team, and also in Munich, I would say, in the scene of trucks. He knows everything about chargers.
All right. Okay, that's of course a great combination. So let's come back to, again, I love startup stories. And so what was it what problem did you set out to solve? Because that's how you build a company. What's the problem that you identified?
Coming back to the research background, we could already see that the tech is possible, right? They were building this technology for the vehicles, this technology for the charging stations, so we can already see it could work from the technical perspective. And as you usually do, being a researcher, you are looking for the next problem to solve. And the next problem we clearly saw coming was the whole operations. Like now we have to assume we have the vehicles, assume we have the chargers. What to do then? You need to get these trucks rolling, and you need to keep them rolling. And this is where we started, where Fryte actually started. We were looking into e-truck operations, into the things that you need to make e-trucks usable for a logistic company. So it's not just rip and replace, throw away the old diesel and put in an e-truck that usually doesn't work. You need to understand how logistic systems work, how the operations work, and you also need to understand how energy and electricity systems work, because you have to connect these two worlds. And this is exactly where we started with Fryte, how to solve this. We started with some route planning, actually. So answering the question, where should I charge to be as fast as possible? But now it became a lot bigger, and it's really about an intelligent platform that manages or matches supply and demand on both sides.
Mm-hmm. All right, clear. We'll come back to the details. So I was puzzled by the name. So how did you come up with the Fryte? So that's Fryte for the audience, right? So
yes.
Where do you come from? Any special meaning?
Actually, it's super simple. It's just a fancy spelling of the word freight. So cargo, another word for cargo. Mm-hmm. There's also a nice anecdote to the story. We started initially with a different name, and the first contact we had with a lawyer was a patent and copyright lawyer. And like in the first 2 minutes of the call, he said, "Okay, guys, you cannot use this name because it's already registered by a quite known and big company. And you have to look for something else." So this was the first experience with lawyers that went well, I would say. But it became obvious we need something else. And actually, the name just emerged from a long car drive. So Max and I were driving to a potential customer, and we were brainstorming ideas. The meeting with the customer was horrible. One of the first meetings we had. So I will not go into details here, but we were not successful, to be honest. But we ended up with the name, and it stuck with us. It resonated, and as far as I got the feedback, it also resonates with the rest of the world. It's like a little bit of it's not completely difficult, but it's also not completely obvious. So I think it's a nice mixture.
And
that's
short.
the story of the name.
In short, yeah. So from your perspective, let's dive into the e-truck revolution and the market forces around this. So from your perspective, why is it now the tipping point for e-trucks?
It's a really, really good question. I think for the answer, we have to start a couple of years back. So when you're looking at from the research perspective, e-trucks, battery electric trucks, were always considered an interesting alternative from the economic sense. But in the studies that already started like 10 years ago, it was always neglected or just stated that it's technically not possible to do long-haul trucking with battery electric trucks because they were not even too expensive, but mostly too heavy. So it was actually a lot about the technology, about battery technology. And as we all know, I think batteries have evolved a lot in the last 10 years. So the progress here also obviously impacted or driven by passenger cars played a huge role that enabled the trucks to become technically feasible from the cargo perspective, from the payload perspective, also from the range perspective. On top of this development, so we are now talking about the technical development. On top of this tech development, there was also the new CO2 emission regulation by the European Union. So they sort of wanted to do the same thing that they did for passenger cars, but for trucks. And this was around 2018 when they introduced the regulation. But they learned some of the things from passenger cars. So the regulation was actually very strict, very harsh for the OEMs, but this forced or enabled and accelerated the whole development. From there on, I think it was this combination, like the battery, the technology was ready enough, and then at the right point, at the right time, there was this regulation that sort of quick started everything. And I think from this on, this is where we are today. There were some developments that also came on top. But
which one, for example, just to mention?
I briefly covered the MCS. I think this is also quite an important aspect regarding the technology. At first, many studies were assuming that you have the same charging standard, so the same plug, the CCS plug, as you would use for passenger cars, but it quickly became clear that it might not be suitable for all the use cases. So quite early, there was this initiative to develop a charging standard just for trucks, so their own plug layout, but also technical specifications. Actually, to keep it simple, MCS is just charging with around 1 megawatt. Technically, the standard covers up to 3 megawatt, but that's actually more interesting for smaller ships, for example. But this is also quite a good example of the tech development. Of course, we still see progress in batteries, so they keep getting cheaper, they keep getting better from the performance. Last but not least, you could almost say, luckily, diesel gets more expensive. That's beneficial for us in this case.
Yes.
And you can also see that electricity, at least for charging, gets cheaper. So these are two developments that obviously contribute to the total cost of ownership, or more specifically to TCO parity. So we are right now at a tipping point where you have a lot of use cases that are doable with an electric truck without being more expensive than a diesel. There are some where you even are cheaper, and a lot where it's like, if you do it clever, you're cheaper. And this is the point where we currently are. We just have to tip the scale a bit.
Exactly. So industry reports estimate Europe will need around 300,000 truck charge points by 2030. So how do you see depot charging fitting into this puzzle compared to public highway charging, which are the two legs that you also guys are working on?
Yeah, depending on the study you look, there's a different ratio between public charging and depot charging. Many of them are around 50-50. So my interpretation is they don't really know exactly. So this is why they end up being so close together. It's pretty straightforward to calculate how many chargers you need, because we know pretty good how trucks are using the roads, how much they drive, where they drive, etc. So from this perspective, it's relatively easy to calculate the amount of energy you need, and from there on, you also know the number of chargers you need. What's a lot more difficult is finding out the ratio where they are charging. In the past, there was this opinion that truck charging will be at the depot primarily, and there will only be very, very little public charging, mostly motivated by high costs. Now we see some development, costs are dropping, public charging becomes more attractive, etc. To be honest, from our perspective, it shouldn't really matter. From the user perspective, it shouldn't matter. You don't really care if it's a public or a shared private charging station. All you want is a good, seamless end-to-end charging experience. You want to have a good price, a good rate. And for speaking for the truck driver here, you want to have some comfort, like some amenities, some facilities, toilet, shower, snacks, supermarket, whatever. And you don't really care where it is. And this is also our perspective on the whole topic. If we want to push truck charging, it shouldn't, for the logistic user, matter where you charge. And this also opens up the whole topic for more stakeholders from more logistic companies. To give you some examples, we have spoken with logistic companies that simply cannot electrify every depot. So, for example, they are just renting the place, and the owner doesn't allow them to build a lot of charging stations there. So they have to go for public charging when they are electrifying this depot. Or electrifying the trucks at this depot. Also, you might be a very small logistic company. You simply don't have the space to do so. So there are some constraints why it will not just be public charging, private charging, depot charging. So there's an argument for both sides, and we are trying to solve this by not strictly dividing it, because how we structure the platform, how we build the user experience, in the end, shouldn't matter.
Before we continue with the show, deploying charging stations in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland? Our optimized masterclass, Compliance First, shows you how to master local grid regulations and stay ahead. Discover how our grid control service helps CPO cut through complexity and connect faster in the DACH region. Watch now the on-demand webinar on our website. And now back to the show. So if we dive a little bit deeper on depot charging, if you have to describe briefly what makes depot charging unique versus public charging.
Yeah. I think the biggest advantage you have with depot charging is that you can produce your own electricity. By nature, logistics usually requires large buildings. You have the warehouses, you have logistic depots, etc. So you already have huge areas that you could, for example, use for PV systems. Also, when you're thinking about stationary storage, if you're talking about a big logistic depot, space is not the biggest constraint you have. So you can install a lot of stationary storage, battery storage capacity. And this brings you in a very good position to work intelligently with the electricity. And this is something you obviously cannot, or not to all the extent, do when you're talking about public charging. And this is, I think, also the biggest advantage, or how can you say that, not just an advantage, but it's a nice, bright future that we can have for the logistic companies, that you're not dependent on this fossil fuel. You're not just buying truckloads of diesel, but you have actually the possibility and the control of one of your most important resources as a logistic company. And this makes depot charging unique, but it also makes it very complex and difficult, right? You have a lot more degrees of freedom. And back in the days, you could say you just bought the diesel. I mean, okay, you can be a good
negotiator and buy it cheap or hedge the price. Yeah. I mean,
exactly, you can hedge the price, but still, it's the whole process. It's a lot less complex than managing multiple assets, maybe across multiple sites, maybe across multiple countries. So this is where I would say the whole topic of connected systems, connected energy management systems, charge point management systems, platform like ours really benefits you to have tools to handle this complexity and actually leverage it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. New opportunity, but complex, without any doubt. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely also more room for creating a competitive advantage versus others, where again,
Absolutely.
buying diesel, you can be as a good purchase manager, but in the end it's difficult to really beat by a lot the others. But here with energy management, some will probably come out really on top if they know how to leverage that, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And this is what we see in the field, right? If we are talking to customers, we have some that already managed to get their electricity price down to 10 cents on average. So 10 cents what they would really pay at the charger. And we have others that are just not that advanced in these topics, and they are more close to what you pay as a household, so 25 to 35 cents.
Yeah.
So it's the huge gap, and in the end, it's a huge margin. And this is what we need to optimize for.
Yeah. And just the idea for me that as a depot, you could become almost a CPO. So you're selling to visitors and you make money on the electricity that you're not using yourself to trucks that are passing by, right? It's
exactly. It's a completely new revenue stream.
Exactly. It's quite intellectually fascinating. Yeah. So you talk about the opportunity, but briefly, what would be the biggest challenges you see at depots today?
Considering the assets that I just mentioned, PV, stationary storage, charging infrastructure, obviously, this is all, or this can be managed on site. The bottleneck to, in my opinion, or to our experience, is the grid connection. So at some point, you have every building, every venue must have some connection to the grid, and this is very often the bottleneck. And it's also the critical aspect in the sense of project planning, because it just takes ages to upgrade. Even if you identify this as your bottleneck and you just want to upgrade it, you might take 2 to 5 years waiting for some hardware, waiting for your network operator, etc. So these are, in many projects, the critical path is because of this. Especially the German grid is not very smart. So you sort of rely on having a very big, very good grid connection. This is just how historically the whole thing was built. And the operators are trying to follow this logic and just upgrade everything, but upgrading it, we're talking about tons of copper that we are installing somewhere.
Yes.
Takes time, costs money, and that's the biggest challenge in my opinion here.
Yeah. Yes. Too expensive for the green transition on European level. Yeah, it cannot be just as simple and dumb as expensive as you say. It has to be a smart use of the grid. Yeah. So again, you mentioned a bit, but just can you take us really to concretely? So where does Fryte bring innovation in the depot space? If we stay on the depot for now.
Yes. So we are building the bridge between logistics and energy. I mean, given your background, given your context, you're approaching this from the energy perspective, and there are also other stakeholders, players here that are coming more from the logistic perspective. So think about it as fleet management software, telematics software, etc. And we are building this missing link. So we have two industries that speak completely different languages, that use different specialized software tools. But in the end, if you want to bring intelligence and smartness to the whole operation, you need to have this translation level, this translation layer here. To give you a more specific example, if you're operating a logistic company, you will most likely use something called transport management system. This is basically the software tool you use to plan cargo. It assigns pallets to trucks, it assigns trucks to tours, etc. So this is your daily tool you use. This also means this piece of software knows when your trucks are at the depot. So it also knows when they aren't. And when you're building an energy management system, this information is quite valuable. You need to know when the trucks are at the depot to make sure they are charged as efficient as possible, not just from the time, but also from the cost perspective. But you also want to plan for the future. So when the trucks are not at the depot and you might want to share your charging infrastructure, and assuming your grid connection is the bottleneck, you might want to know if someone is coming in the next hour and wants to charge with 500 kilowatts. Because
Yes.
when your grid connection is already at the limit and your battery storage is empty, then you have a very unhappy customer at your depot. So this is a very, very simple example how these two systems should talk to each other.
Exactly.
And in the end, I mean, of course, we are building the software to do so, but in the end, we are also bringing together the people, because we have to connect not just the technical systems, but also two industries. Not just the tech systems speak different languages, also the people there speak different languages. If you're coming from logistics, you have no idea about, in German you say Bilanzkreise, so the accounting methods of electricity markets. That's not your home turf, but it's very important to understand how these things work for a good operation. So we are a big translator.
Exactly. Yeah. And a connector. Yeah. I understand. We also, FlexiCharge is also a connector within the space of energy, connecting the assets. And here you connecting on, I would say, macro level, the different components, the software, bridging the two worlds, like the analogy. Very clear one. Yeah. So if you look at, what kind of services are important to be successful as a depot owner here or logistic company. So, for example, how would you evaluate how important is smart load management, battery storage? You mentioned many times already, energy scheduling also in depot charging in general.
I think it's super important. If you're electrifying a depot, you cannot do it without it. I mean, load management is obviously the first thing you need, also to make sure that you're not exceeding any limits, but you very quickly realize that you need some smartness to it. And if you're looking into smart load managing, you very quickly end up about these tools that also manage all the assets. So smart load management shouldn't just consider the charging, for example, and the grid connection point, but if you really want to leverage, and this is also what the research in Max research project showed, if you really want to leverage this to the maximum, you need a tool that plans all these assets in an orchestrated and aggregated way. And I mean, it's quite a simple question. If you know that a truck wants to charge at your depot tomorrow, 12 a.m., you can make sure that your battery is charged, that your stationary battery is charged, or you can make sure if you have some PV forecast, you know that the sun is shining, has enough power, or you already plan ahead and know, okay, electricity will be cheap anyway, I'll just take it from the grid. And these are all the kind of considerations that have to be part of this smart load management. This is what you cannot do with Excel and pen and paper anymore. So electrifying a depot without smart load management just doesn't make sense anymore. So I would say it's a critical part for depot electrification, yes.
Yeah, and I guess that's a big difference between depot and even high power charging hubs, which have been starting almost without smart load management. Because if you start with two high power chargers, most grid connection could handle it. So, but here we're talking straight from the start, such a level of kilowatt involved that you need to have this intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's look a bit ahead. What excites you guys most about the next 12 months, and how far do you expect the industry to be, let's say, by October 26?
Looking into the future, that's always something you don't want to do as a researcher, giving assumptions, giving forecasts. You have to force yourself. I think what excites me most about the next 12 months is that we will see the rollout of the vehicles accelerating. So if you're looking at the new registration numbers, about the growth numbers, there is a lot of movement right now, even though in the media and the news it might look a bit more pessimistic, but if you're looking at the numbers, it's not that bad, to be honest. So we will see more and more e-trucks on the road. I mean, if you look carefully and if you know what to look for, you already see some today. But in October 26, we will definitely see a lot more. And with this, the whole topic of where to charge all these trucks will become more and more important. So from our perspective, the next 12 months will show how these shared networks, these shared charging networks will evolve. Right now, we see the movement that these logistic companies that build or initiate these networks, they are building an alternative to the public charging. And it's still to be decided how it turns out, who the winner is in the end. But it's very exciting to see this movement, because you see logistic companies collaborating. We have workshops, we have calls with, technically they are competitors, but they are on the same table and discussing how to accelerate, how to bring forward the topic. And for me, this is super exciting. This is super, super cool to see how this challenge makes people collaborate, makes people to work together. And in the next year, we will see the first results of these collaborations.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think it seems like a quite traditional industry that needs to get together to propel itself in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with those new technologies and share some learnings, as you say, even if they're competitors, and share some infrastructures. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. So couldn't agree more. Yeah, and if we try to go even further, crystal ball. So. What excites you most about the next 3-5 years in e-truck charging? Is it how do you see it's crazy by the end of the decade, right? How would a depot charging look like and operate in big picture?
Yeah, it's super interesting. If I may answer this question by looking back how trucking or truck technology used to work, we have development cycles that are like 10 to 15 years. So every 10 years, you have a new generation of trucks. This is how you were used to work with diesel trucks. And now the whole thing with battery electric trucks started in 2017, 2018. And it's now 7 years from now. We are talking about a complete new technology, complete new approach of trucking. It requires optimization, adaptation in all these fields. So given that pace, given that huge change, it's almost impossible to say what will be in 5 years, but I will still try. I think we see some of the more clear developments in the area of vehicle to grid. We saw it at the ERR Mobility in Munich last month, yes, where we have the first publicly available contracts, options, tariffs for vehicle to grid charging for passenger cars. And this is something that the logistic companies are very excited about. I mean, this is the first time in history you could make money with a truck while it's idling, while it's just standing there, and you can earn money with it. It's very, very...
which is usually the time where you're losing money and not making money, because
it's not making money, yeah.
It has to move all the time.
Exactly. It just makes money when it's moving. And maybe in 3 to 5 years, it will also make money when it's not moving, which also brings a whole other factor into the operations. In the end, you have to decide if you take the tour or leave the truck in your depot and just sell the electricity. Could be more margin on it. Absolutely. But yeah, I think vehicle to grid is something that we have to look for. Many people are talking about MCS, but I mean, for me, this is the evolution of a standard. So of course, it will change a bit how we see truck charging. It will also highlight these two separate kinds of infrastructure, because you cannot charge a passenger car with the MCS system, at least by default. Not.
Yes.
So this, I'm not that excited about it. I think this is just a normal development, normal evolution of technology. Of course, when you're talking about cars, you always talk about autonomous cars. We've been talking about autonomous vehicles for quite some time now. Yeah. I know a lot of voices that say that trucks are the first vehicles to be fully automated, also because there's a business case behind it, right? It's just not It's not just the pleasure of being driven by a computer, but it's actually a business case if you replace the human in the loop. So there might be a bigger business opportunity for autonomous vehicles. I still have my doubts about technology readiness in 3 to 5 years. It is way harder than we think it is to make cars drive autonomously and now do the same with a 40-ton truck. You really have to be sure that it's working. Still, you see some interesting development, for example, on closed areas like harbors or depots or like these transitioning areas. So this could be something where you can see autonomous technology in the field in the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's realistic. I would doubt that we see autonomous trucks on the highway in 3 to 5 years, to be honest, but I'm happy if I'm wrong, because I'm an engineer. I love technology, so I would love to see the vehicles, but I'm a German engineer. That's why I'm skeptic.
Yeah, exactly.
I think these are the big developments that we currently see here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. All right. On that note, thank you for taking the time today, Sebastian. So for the audience interested, you can check out Fryte's website and follow them on LinkedIn and connect with Sebastian. You'll find the link to his profile in the show notes. Looking forward to meeting you again in the next future. I think, we're recording here in October. So actually, I think we'll see each other in Berlin for the next truck event for those who go there. Otherwise, we'll be somewhere around in Europe. Thank you, Sebastian.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Christophe, for having me. It has been a pleasure, and happy to connect. That's what we set out for.
And that's our wrap for today. I really enjoyed this deep dive with Sebastian, CTO and co-founder of Fryte. What struck me most is how clearly Fryte sits at the intersection of two worlds, logistics and energy, and how their mission is to connect these ecosystems so electric trucks can actually operate efficiently at scale. Sebastian reminded us that the technology challenge, batteries, megawatt charging, vehicle readiness, is largely solved. What's emerging now is the operations challenge, how to plan, charge, and dispatch fleets so trucks keep rolling without overloading the grid or disrupting schedules. He also highlighted how depot charging will play a central role in this transition. Depots are not just parking lots anymore. They're evolving into energy hubs, combining solar generation, stationary storage, and smart scheduling to make each truck truly competitive. That's a huge mind shift for fleet operators, moving from fuel buyers to energy managers. And finally, Sebastian's vision for seamless driver experience really stood out. One where it doesn't matter if you charge in a depot, a public hub, or a partner site. What matters is that it's efficient, predictable, and fully integrated into operations. If there's one key takeaway from today, it's this. The e-truck revolution is no longer about just the vehicle, it's about the system around it. And companies like Fryte are building that system, one algorithm, one route, and one depot at a time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the podcast a 5-star rating. It really helps other professionals and curious minds discover the show and join this growing community. And of course, hit subscribe and share it with someone who cares about the future of logistics. See you in the next episode of the ChargePoint podcast, where we keep exploring how electrification is transforming transport 1 kilowatt at a time. Bye for now.